Welcome to Season 4 of My Wife the Dietitian, a fun, evidence-based weekly podcast about nutrition and healthy living. Today we're talking about lactose intolerance. Do you really have to give up all your dairy? Listen in to find out. Enjoying the show? You can help others find it and enjoy it too by giving us a 5-star rating or review. If you feel like reaching out to us with a question or comment, you can send us an email at mywifetherd@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit our website at mywifethedietitian.com, as well as our social media pages. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Enjoy the show. Welcome to My Wife the Dietitian. Hello, Sandra.
Hello, Rob.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
We have a question from a listener, Joanne.
Hello, Joanne.
She says, I sometimes have bloating and cramps after drinking milk. Should I eliminate dairy?
Oh, absolutely. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Start eliminating things?
That's what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
If you Google it, it'll say, take out this, take out that, take out everything.
Yeah. And what will that do? Will that make you feel better, do you think?
It could.
It doesn't really, I don't know. It's funny. It's like when you take your car to the mechanic. I've always got these funny analogies because this is how my brain works. And I'm not a scientist, but it's like taking your car to the mechanic and saying, I've got this funny knocking sound. And then they just start like replacing parts. Going, oh, maybe it's this. Let's replace this. That'll be X amount of dollars for that. Did that work? No. Okay, well, let's try replacing something else. It seems kind of like the wrong way to do it.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, you can try an elimination diet to, temporarily remove things and then put them back in and like see how you feel when you remove them. But with the way a lot of clients that I see, they come to me with lots of symptoms of indigestion and IBS, so bloating and gas and diarrhea, constipation, like different symptoms of a gut dysfunction, basically. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they've already eliminated so much, or they've been instructed by other healthcare professionals to take a lot of things out of their diet. And it might be 6 months later, and they're just not getting the nutrition they need. And their gut lining has been suffering. So we know that the gut biome weighs more than the brain. Like
really?
It's like an organ.
Wow.
And if you keep eliminating things, you're not going to have that diversity. We talked about how important to get like a wide variety of plant foods in your diet. But we'll go there in a minute. Let's talk about lactose.
Okay.
Because we haven't really talked about it. We've talked about plant-based alternative milks. That was like one of the first episodes.
Number one.
Was it?
Oh, yeah. Very first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not specifically lactose. Not that I recall anyway.
Yeah, because it is very common. It's like more than 2/3 of the world's population could have lactose intolerance.
Oh, is that right? Mm-hmm. Like legitimate lactose intolerance or like social media inspired lactose intolerance?
Funny.
Well, that's a thing. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well,
do you know what I mean? Like there's so many like dysfunctions now that people think they have because they saw some video on YouTube. And I don't know, it just seems like there's a whole lot more now than there was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I'm sure some of them are legitimate because there's been changes in our food, but I think there's a lot of sort of false positives with our how we're identifying our food issues.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more awareness too of just nutrients and food components.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
So, do you know almost everyone is born with the ability to digest lactose?
Is that a requirement because of breastfeeding?
Yes.
You think our bodies are designed to?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Nature's pretty amazing that way. And then over time we develop an intolerance?
Over time, yeah, with age.
Okay.
You can become more lactose intolerant.
Right. Okay.
So it's actually the 8th week of gestation where they've shown that the fetus has the lactase enzymes in the intestine. And then the maximum is at the time of birth. so that they can digest the breast milk.
Okay. And what the lactase enzyme allows you to absorb lactose?
Yeah, let's go back to the basics.
Yeah, this sounds familiar. I think we've discussed this before and how it works, but not ever done a full episode on it. So maybe we could just refresh kind of the whole lactose situation.
Yeah, what is a lactose intolerance? So lactose is the milk sugar in milk products.
Right, okay.
And I think you said...
Is it only in milk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there lactose in other things besides milk? Good question. What do you think?
I'm guessing no.
Really?
Just a guess. I don't know.
You don't think there's lactose in ice cream or cheese or yogurt?
If it has milk, if it comes from a milk-based product, then it would. But
okay, yeah.
I don't think there's lactose in like granola or in like bread. Or in
actually, it can be in not in meat, but it can be.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it can be in different products.
May contain lactose.
Yes, that is a statement.
No, yeah, like that's the little warning, and you'd find it like on the side of your peanuts or something. And it's one of those things you find in the craziest places. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here, so carry on with your.
Yeah, it's more like in bakery items, in cereals, in. Many kind of processed foods. But the biggest source of lactose is in a glass of milk, like cow's milk.
Right.
So a cup of milk is about 12 grams of lactose.
Okay.
Goat's milk is like 11. And then like yogurt's got about 7 in like 3/4 of a cup of yogurt. And ice cream has like half a cup of ice cream has like 5 grams of lactose. Hard cheese and aged cheese are very low amount of lactose. And if it's fermented, like if it has, if it's yogurt, for instance, it has the active culture, it actually breaks down some of the lactose, so your body is more able to digest it.
Right.
So the lactose sugar it's a disaccharide, meaning there's 2 sugars. It's a galactose and glucose combined.
Okay.
And the lactase enzyme, it's like scissors. It breaks those to the disaccharide apart.
Okay.
So that it makes it a smaller molecule for our body to digest.
Right. And is it something we need? Like, does our body need lactose? Or we just need milk and milk, or I mean, not milk per se, but dairy is good for us for a variety of reasons, but dairy happens to contain lactose. But is there anything about lactose that our body needs, or is it just the calcium and the protein and the other things that are in the dairy products that we need? Like, do we need specifically lactose in our body?
Do we need it? Like, as an essential kind of like?
Yeah.
Like,
does it have a role, or does it have a purpose?
No, we don't need it.
Like do something, or
we don't need it.
Okay.
But variety is a spice of life, and in our culture, we do have dairy. A lot of the wellness industry is kind of condemning dairy and milk and saying we don't really need it. So there's a lot of complexity around this issue. Everyone's different. It is genetically, like there's places in the world that they're more likely to have a lactose intolerance.
Oh, like different cultures in the world, you mean?
Yes.
I see. Okay.
Yes, definitely. So like Scandinavian has a high tolerance for lactose, whereas, and Northern Europe. So they have kind of long history of having dairy in the diet. So their bodies have the lactase enzyme.
And it's adapted. Their body's adapted to having dairy.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it can handle it. I see.
That's right. Whereas 9 in 10 East Asians have a lactose intolerance.
Oh, wow.
9 in 10 African Americans have a lactose intolerance. 7 in 10 Caucasians might have a lactose intolerance.
Interesting. But makes sense once you explain it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like Australia, US, and Canada, it's about 50% of the population could be lactose intolerant. But it doesn't mean that you can't digest any lactose. There's varying levels of intolerance, and there's lots of reasons. So it depends on how much lactose you're having in a meal.
Okay.
So remember I said how a cup of cow's milk, 12 grams, is that's probably the highest amount.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
So people might feel like they get gas and bloating an hour after having their cereal in the morning, if they have cereal and milk.
Right.
And if you have skim milk, so the amount of fat in the milk affects how you absorb the lactose. So if it's a higher fat milk, it's more slowly absorbed and it actually helps.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So skim milk is absorbed more quickly because there's no fat.
Right.
And so that can affect the tolerance.
Does that mean that it will hit you quicker? Like you'll notice the results quicker?
Possibly.
Because it's hitting bottom kind of essentially earlier?
Yeah.
Faster?
Yeah. And what are some of the symptoms of lactose intolerance?
I just think of like GI issues like gas and bloating, like you said. I don't really know of any other ones. I'm not really that familiar with it.
Yeah. It's a malabsorption of the lactose. So you start having bloating and indigestion and diarrhea, like urgency. You could have like grumbling. Your stomach is doesn't feel great.
I don't think I'm lactose intolerant. I grew up drinking like buckets of milk.
Okay.
Like my brother and I would just like go through, remember the bags of milk? I think they still sell them. I don't know that anyone buys those anymore, and you'd have to like clip the little top off it. And
I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah. We'd go through like a bag of milk at dinner time. I think like 3 bags, like it would come in a 3-pack.
Right.
That'd last us like a day and a half, 2 days at the most. Like we'd just inhale milk.
Interesting.
Yeah. I just remember that. It's just growing up drinking so much milk.
Well, and then that helps you you have the lactase enzyme. And if you are drinking milk, then you continue to produce that enzyme.
Right.
If you stop drinking it, that's the other thing about elimination diets, or if you start cutting things out of your diet, then you lose the enzymes to help your body digest it.
Right.
So it's a bit of a tricky scenario. Like
you don't want to cut it out too long or you'll be getting the wrong result because your body will change and will give you a different reaction, I guess, to when you start bringing it back again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because there's different types. Like there's a primary lactose intolerance and there's a secondary lactose intolerance. So primary is where you have a deficiency of the lactase enzyme. You just don't produce it. Okay. You don't have it. A secondary lactose intolerance is after you've had injury to your intestines. So you maybe have inflammation, you have Crohn's, you have celiac, you have inflammatory bowel disease, or you've had surgery, or you've had like chemotherapy, or you've had some sort of injury or infection, or maybe like a food poisoning.
Right.
And then that trigger event can set you up for a secondary lactose intolerance.
Oh, interesting.
So you've lost the lactase enzyme in your intestine.
Right.
And so you just don't have that enzyme to help break down the lactose. So you might find that you used to be able to digest milk, or you used to be able to have lactose and it was fine. And then for whatever reason, you can't digest it anymore. And this also happens, there's a lot of people that are really pushing themselves and doing a lot of extremes, like, training for a marathon, maybe fasting and not eating a lot of the day, really calorie restriction, maybe not sleeping well, maybe stress. Like there's a lot of kind of accumulative factors. And then that could
like trigger?
Yeah, that could lead to a change in your gut microbiome.
Right.
And part of that could affect your ability to digest lactose.
Wow. Oh, that's interesting. I guess like when you push and there's stress on different fronts, something's got to give somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So I guess for some people, that's kind of what happens. That's your body's reaction to what you're doing to it.
When lactose is properly digested, it's broken down into 2 different sugar molecules, as I mentioned, the glucose and galactose.
Right.
And the lactase is the enzyme that's needed to break down the lactose.
Okay.
So it's like the little scissors that breaks it up, right?
Right.
Or cuts it into smaller pieces. So some people don't produce any or enough lactase. Maybe they produce a little bit, but not enough. So the lactose passes through the intestine undigested. And when that occurs, the gut bacteria in the intestine ferment the lactose, which produces gas. And that leads to bloating and cramps and causes lots of water to enter into the intestine quickly, leading to diarrhea.
Oh, lovely.
And these are uncomfortable symptoms associated with lactose intolerance. So some people who don't digest lactose cannot tolerate any dairy products,
Okay.
while others can tolerate small amounts. So if dairy is consumed with a meal, there can be minor symptoms or no symptoms at all.
Because,
do you know why?
Well, because the food probably absorbs enough and helps with the absorption, slows it down probably, right?
Slows it down. You got it.
Yeah, just like you were saying about the skim milk versus the regular milk.
Yeah, 2% or whole milk.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting that, there's other factors in the meal that can affect how well you digest the lactose. So what to do? Like how to remedy this or what to do to manage this if this is a problem for you.
Right. What was the question again? Like, do I have it or what should I do? Or
I sometimes have bloating and cramps after drinking milk. Should I eliminate dairy?
Right. I see. Okay. So you're saying there's a bit of a sliding scale as far as how different people react to, say, the same amount of milk, for instance. Some people will have an extreme immediate reaction. Other people will have nothing, or they'll have a tiny reaction. So it's kind of like almost a different answer for everyone. In a way, it depends on their symptoms a little bit, right?
Yeah, and the level of lactose varies depending on the food.
True.
Remember we talked about that?
Yep.
And so spreading it out into smaller amounts over the day can really be helpful.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I told you like cheese and yogurt are very low levels of lactose. So those would be usually non-offensive. Like they're usually pretty well tolerated for people that have primary lactose intolerance.
Okay.
But, as I said, like it's a sliding scale. Everyone's a little bit different.
Sure. Yeah.
There are benefits to eating dairy. I know that milk has a bad rap in the wellness world and the wellness space. You hear that it causes acne and inflammation, and there's no evidence that it actually, unless you have a lactose intolerance,
right?
Or now that's different than a milk allergy. Did you know that?
I did know that. Yeah.
Okay.
Because a milk allergy is more of a rash, isn't it?
A milk allergy is an allergy to the protein in the milk.
Okay.
The casein or the whey.
Right.
And it's usually the casein. The whey allergy is not as common as a casein allergy.
Okay.
But that's a different scenario than what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the milk sugar in milk, the lactose.
Right. Can you get lactose-free milk now?
Yes.
Isn't that a thing? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a real strategy too. Just buy lactose-free milk, lactose-free yogurt's available too.
Right.
And cheese. So that's an option to help if you know that you have a lactose intolerance. Sometimes they're a little bit pricier.
Probably. Yeah.
So that is a barrier. There are a lactase enzyme that you can take. So there's little tablets that you take right before you have a meal with lactose, or there's a liquid drop that you put into the milk if you want to drink milk. Now, there's so many plant-based alternatives out there now that most people, I don't know a whole lot of people that actually use the lactase enzyme drops in their milk, although it used to be a thing. I saw it like 20 years ago more than I do now. But people just use soy milk instead, or
there's alternatives.
Yeah, the plant-based alternatives. Soy is actually one of the better ones in terms of the nutrition profile and the calcium and protein, vitamin D and all that.
It's not one of the trendier ones, but it's definitely one of the more nutritional ones.
Yeah. So what are some of the benefits of dairy?
Calcium.
Right. So helping bone health and preventing osteoporosis, helping with your teeth, the strength of your bones and teeth. And we know that It has calcium, vitamin D. The vitamin D helps your gut absorb the calcium.
I thought there was vitamin D. I was going to say that.
Yeah, and it's hard to get vitamin D in our food supply. I mean, there's hardly any sources other than fish.
Can you get enough from milk? Like, it's still not enough even if you're drinking milk, right?
Yeah, it's probably not enough like to rely on milk to get your vitamin D.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm saying.
But it is a big source. And also vitamin K, there's potassium, magnesium. So there's lots of different vitamins and minerals in dairy.
Protein.
Yeah, and protein. Exactly. And that's where it actually helps possibly with weight loss goals for people.
Okay.
It's been shown that with drinking milk or including dairy, because like you said, there's protein, there's carbohydrates, there's fat, if it's a bit of a, like if it's 1% or 2% or whole milk.
Yeah.
That is satiating. So it helps prevent cravings of other kind of junkier foods.
Right.
And if you have some milk or dairy before bed, it can actually help with your sleep a little bit.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be warm.
It could be. Actually, that helps. It's funny, eh? Warm milk.
Does it make a difference, or is it just, it's more pleasant to drink or something more relaxing? Like, I wonder if there's anything like chemically different.
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
It's like a warm beverage. It's kind of like, you know, when
it's like
when you're an infant, a newborn, warm milk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And with the weight loss goals, it can help with preserving lean muscle while helping you lose weight.
Okay.
And also, there's an inverse relationship with diabetes risk. So having dairy can reduce your risk of diabetes. So including foods that are dairy products. So
right.
Because they have the protein, the carbohydrates, and the fat, people that have dairy, there's an inverse relationship with risk of developing diabetes.
So the more milk, the less diabetes or less risk.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like 2 to 3 servings a day. And then heart health, it can reduce risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke and hypertension, probably because of the potassium in dairy.
Right.
And it can actually help reduce cognitive decline and risk of Alzheimer's because of the calcium and protein and B12. Because it's an animal product, you're getting a good source of vitamin B12, which is difficult to get from plant foods.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
So anyways, there's benefits there. And so to eliminate dairy, I don't like the word eliminate.
No,
unless you have an allergy, or say you have, you know, we've talked to the dietitian who specializes in celiac disease, and you do have to eliminate gluten with celiac disease at this point. But with a lactose intolerance, you probably can have a little bit of dairy, like having some cheese, some yogurt, maybe spreading out the dairy through the day. Like if you want to put a little bit of milk in your tea or
on your cereal.
Yeah. Have a little bit on your oatmeal or you could buy lactate milk, lactose reduced milk, or get the tablets or the lactase enzymes to help break down the lactose.
Right.
And you can try to actually gradually increase the amount of dairy to see how you tolerate it.
Oh, right. Because it might change over time, you mean?
That's right.
Your body will become used to it and adapt.
Yes. Yes. So it's, it's worth it because we have to eat food for the rest of our lives. It's nice to have a good relationship with all foods and to have variety and diversity in our diet so that we can go to social functions. We can include different foods. And so I caution people about eliminating foods because it does set up a restriction in your mind. I just had a client this morning that, years of having to restrict for certain medical conditions, but, she just said, I'd love to have some pizza with my boyfriend.
Totally.
But I can't because of all the different things that she's dealing with. But, you can just feel the pain, the loss of freedom of like food freedom, like just
and the enjoyment that comes from that.
Yeah. And just like, And that was the other thing, is like always having to make her own meals, like in terms of bringing her special meal to a function. If there's a potluck and she's eating a different meal than everyone else there. And it's just, it breaks my heart when I see people that are eliminating foods or taking things out unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Because it kind of sets a course for their future. Like with dairy, you could become lactose intolerant, like more so.
You're training your body to become. Yeah, exactly. I wonder how many people know that, because that's one of those things. It's like once you start, you can't go back.
The same with vegetarianism.
Not easily, anyway.
Like it's hard to break down, like have the enzymes to break down meat if you have cut it out.
Yeah. And I think there's so many, I sort of alluded to this jokingly earlier, but there's so many trends through social media now that are encouraging people to jump on the bandwagon for no, like, I don't know, like it's almost like a trend. Let's all be gluten-free. Let's all be lactose-free. Let's stop eating this, or let's start eating this. And you got to think about the results and dig a little deeper before you just like jump on in there because of whatever the promised results are, you know? And usually it's cosmetic, or it's like, you'll lose weight, or it's the new fad thing that everyone's doing. But, you know, if you don't need to do it, your body needs these nutrients that you're cutting out. And like Sandra's just saying, like, once you start cutting them out, are you going to be able to get them back in without issue? You know, some of these, it sounds like that's not an easy task.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, as I mentioned, we have to have a relationship with food for the rest of our lives. So dairy is a big category of different foods that could be enjoyed in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like cheese and yogurt and ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, yeah, for Joanne's question, she is having bloating and cramps after drinking milk. So it could be a lactose intolerance. And I wouldn't suggest eliminating dairy, but maybe reducing how much you're having at one time. Maybe if you're having cereal and milk, maybe have soy milk or get a plant-based alternative for that cereal, and then still include some cheese, maybe some yogurt, kefir. You know, there's different ways to get the beneficial effects of dairy without having a cup of milk if you think that that's the culprit. And maybe in the future, you'll be able to have milk.
Yeah, there you go. Excellent advice.
If you are going to have soy milk or any of the plant-based alternatives that we did a whole episode number 1 on, I would suggest shaking the container before you pour it, because a lot of times the calcium settles out and is on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
So if you shake it up, then you're going to spread out all the
bits and pieces,
all the components of the milk, or
kind of want to do that's a general rule for anything liquid. Usually, I think shake well before using. Mm-hmm. It's like rinse and repeat with your shampoo. That's one of those universal rules.
Yeah, right. Rinse and repeat.
Repeat. I don't know why you have to repeat, though. I think they're just trying to sell you more shampoo.
Yeah, probably.
Use it up quicker.
So there's a few other calcium-rich foods to consider if that's something that you're trying to make sure you're getting enough of. So we know that like canned fish with the bones, so like sardines and salmon, have some highly absorbable calcium. So if you can include those, then that would be great. Also plants like kale, broccoli, boiled spinach actually has a fair amount of calcium.
Calcium, yeah.
And I did want to mention there's different tests that you can have for a lactose intolerance. The hydrogen breath test is the most common. And you get basically you eat or you take an amount of dairy or lactose containing food. So it's going to be about 50 grams. And then they will measure how much hydrogen comes out of your breath, because that's basically, if you are able to absorb that lactose, you probably won't have any. But if you aren't absorbing it, then you're going to have lots of gas.
Oh, interesting.
So they'll be able to measure that.
Huh.
There's also the lactose tolerance test. There's an elimination test where you take it out and see how you feel and then add it back in. But as I mentioned, you might be reducing the amount of lactase enzymes in your intestine by completely eliminating. And there's like different elimination diets, like the low FODMAP, where you're taking out a lot of different elements if you have gut issues. But again, the goal is eventually to have a wide variety and good diversity of different foods in your diet, and not just, just keep eliminating, taking out, restricting. That just can be detrimental in the long term.
Yeah. Question for you, and I don't know if there's an easy answer, but why do we, like with Joanne's question, for instance, why does she assume that it's milk that's giving her these bloating issues? Because isn't bloating like a fairly common symptom for a lot of different things? Like, could it be from gluten? Maybe, I don't know. Isn't that a symptom for gluten? Like, there's probably a lot of different triggers, I would say, for GI issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it is because she kind of narrowed it down that it's happening mostly after drinking milk.
Okay. So that's part of the process then for people if they need to sort of do a little homework and pay attention to what they're eating and how they feel.
Oh, symptom diary for sure. Like, write it down. Like, have a little book or an app where you just record what you're eating and your symptoms. So it might be that you have your breakfast and then in an hour later, you run into the washroom. Okay, what's going on? What did I eat? So if you have it written down, like it's a record, food and symptom diary or record. Mm-hmm. So then that really helps to kind of pinpoint it. So if you do that for 2 days during the week and a weekend day, because it might be a little bit different eating habits or what you're doing during your day on the weekend versus during the week.
True.
And then that will help just kind of narrow it down.
Right. Now, you said an hour. Is that kind of a typical window for how fast your body processes what you've just eaten?
Well, for lactose, it's typically like half an hour to an hour and a half. Everybody's a little bit different in terms of how their motility. And
I always wondered that because I know like sometimes you'll eat something and then like the next day you feel weird and you blame it on what you ate the day before, but maybe it was what I just ate an hour ago.
Who knows? It could be. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, interesting. I'm going to have to pay attention to that now. I've always kind of wondered how that works. Get my little food diary in the kitchen and...
No, keep it somewhere else. I
don't want to know.
I don't want to like hear about your digestive problems when I'm trying to cook.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Very good. Well, that was very informative. Thanks for explaining all that. And just to clarify, I meant to ask you this earlier, but the people with lactose intolerance don't have the lactase enzyme?
Or they don't have enough of it.
I see. So that's why they would have to take that enzyme. Like you said, they could take it when they're drinking milk or whatever. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Very good. All right. If you want more information or interesting information or looking for fun things to read in your spare time, like who has spare time anymore? If you do, though, check out our website because it's a wealth of information. There's all sorts of great articles. There's blog articles. There's media articles. We've got a free newsletter if you like getting information and great tips and recipes and all that sort of stuff in your email once a week. You can sign up for that. So you just visit the website. You'll find it on most pages of the website. There's a sign up button for that. It's mywifethedietitian.com. If you want to email us your questions like Joanne did, we love answering questions. We love hearing from our listeners. You can email us at mywifetherd@gmail.com. You can also rate and review the show. That's another great way for you to let us know what you think. And if you've got different ideas you'd like us to sort of consider, let us know. We love hearing feedback. Even if it's just giving us a rating. 5-star rating would be nice. But if you don't like it, that's fine too. Just let us know. It all helps. And if you do like it, why don't you share it with some friends? So I'm sure your friends would like to know that you're onto a great new show and they would learn something too. If you want to reach out to us elsewhere, you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You You can feel free to reach out to us there. Give us a like, thumbs up, big smiley face or a heart or however it works. It's all good. So that is it for this show. We will be back on Wednesday with Nutrition Nuggets, our midweek, sometimes mini episode. A little bit more information for you to digest, as it were. So until then, have a fantastic week, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on My Wife the Dietitian. If you like what you heard, don't be shy. Leave us a comment or review, and be sure to share our podcast with your friends. If you'd like to hear more, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media pages for updates, episode trailers, and other odds and ends. For more info and links on what we discussed on today's episode, check the show notes. We'll be back next week with another informative and fun-filled episode.